The courthouse bathroom mirror showed a woman I barely recognized. Paleface. Hollow eyes. Hands that wouldn't stop shaking no matter how many times I pressed them against the cold porcelain sink. I'd thrown up twice in the last hour, my stomach twisting itself into knots so tight I could barely breathe. Through the bathroom door, I could hear them. My mother's voice, high and desperate, echoing down the marble hallway. She's doing this for attention. She always needed attention. Ever since she was little, making up stories, exaggerating everything. My father's deeper rumble followed words I couldn't quite make out, but the tone was clear. Disgust. Disappointment. The same tone I'd heard my entire life whenever I dared to want something for myself. I gripped the edge of the sink harder, my knuckles going white. In my purse, folded and refolded so many times the creases had started to tear, was the letter. The letter my brother Isaac had sent me 3 days ago, delivered by his lawyer. Handwritten. 7 pages of accusations, manipulations, and threats. The last line burned in my memory like a brand. You were always the weak one, Janice. You'll crack on that stand and everyone will see you for the liar you are. Family forgives, but I won't. Not this time. I'd read it so many times I could recite it by heart, each word a carefully aimed knife designed to make me doubt myself, to make me back down, to make me remember my place as the family disappointment. But tucked into my blazer pocket was something else. Something that kept me standing here instead of running out the back exit like every instinct screamed at me to do. A photo. Faded and creased, taken 7 years ago on the day I signed the lease for my bakery. I was standing in front of a rundown storefront with broken windows and peeling paint, but my smile was incandescent. Pure joy. Pure hope. Pure determination. That girl in the photo had no idea what was coming. No idea that her own brother would try to steal everything she built. No idea that her parents would side with the thief. No idea that standing up for herself would mean losing her entire family. But she also had no idea how strong she was. How she'd survive. How she'd fight back. A knock on the bathroom door made me jump. Miss Patterson, my lawyer's voice calm and steady. The judge is ready. It's time. I looked at myself one more time in that mirror. I straightened my blazer, smoothed down my hair, and walked to the door. My hands were still shaking, but I opened it anyway. Miss Rodriguez stood there in her sharp gray suit, her expression serious but kind. Behind her, I could see them all waiting. My mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd been clutching since we arrived. My father standing like a stone pillar, arms crossed, face set in that familiar expression of judgment. And Isaac, my brother, sitting on a bench with his own lawyer, looking at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A smile that said he still thought he'd win. That said he knew exactly which buttons to push to make me fall apart. Behind the heavy courtroom doors, a jury of 12 strangers was about to decide if I was a vindictive sister, destroying her family over petty grudges, or a victim who'd finally found the courage to fight back against years of manipulation and theft. They were about to decide if the security camera footage, the bank records, the witness testimonies, and the mountain of evidence I'd compiled were enough to prove what my family had spent months denying, that Isaac had stolen from me. Lied about me and tried to take the one thing I'd built without them. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. The sound of the hinges creaking echoed in the sudden silence. This was it. No turning back. No more chances to be the good daughter who stayed quiet and took the abuse with a smile. I'd filed the lawsuit. I'd stood my ground. And now, in about 30 seconds, I'd know if justice existed, or if blood really was thicker than truth. My legs felt like water as I walked forward, but I walked anyway. Because that girl in the photo, the one with the incandescent smile standing in front of her broken-down dream, deserved this. She deserved someone to fight for her. And if my family wouldn't do it, then I would. Miss Rodriguez leaned close as we entered the courtroom, her voice barely a whisper. Remember, no matter what happens in there, you've already won. You stood up. You refused to be a victim. That takes more courage than most people have in their entire lives. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But all I could think about was Isaac's letter, my mother's tears, my father's disappointment, and the very real possibility that in a few minutes a judge would tell me I was wrong. That family was more important than justice. That I should have just kept quiet and let them take what they wanted like I always had before. If you're invested in finding out what happens next, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me if you've ever had to stand up to family. Your support means everything, and I read every single comment. Now let me take you back to where this all began. I was 6 years old the first time I decided I wanted to own a bakery. It wasn't some vague childhood dream that would fade with time. It was a certainty that settled into my bones the moment my grandmother let me help her frost a birthday cake for my cousin's party. The way the buttercream swirled under the spatula, creating little peaks and valleys, felt like magic. The smell of vanilla and sugar made me feel safe in a way our house never did. My grandmother noticed the wonder in my eyes and said, "You've got the touch, Janice. Some people are born to create beauty, and you're one of them." I held on to those words like a life raft. But when I announced at dinner that night that I was going to be a baker when I grew up, the laughter was immediate and cruel. My father, Joe, didn't even look up from his meatloaf. "Baking, that's not a career, that's a hobby. You'll waste 4 years in college just to end up somebody's housewife anyway." My mother, Kathy, sighed that particular sigh she reserved for my disappointments. "Janice, honey, you need to be realistic. Your brother Isaac is studying engineering. That's a real profession. Maybe you could be a teacher. At least you'd have summers off with your kids." Isaac, who was 13 at the time, smirked across the table. "Yeah, Jan, stick to easy stuff. Math and science aren't really your thing anyway, right?" I was too young to understand that their words were about them, not me. Too young to recognize that my father's bitterness about his own unfulfilled dreams had calcified into contempt for anyone who dared to dream bigger. Too young to see that my mother's resignation to a life she didn't choose had made her allergic to ambition in her daughter. And definitely too young to understand that Isaac had learned early that putting me down was the fastest way to earn their approval. So I just nodded, swallowed my cake, and went to my room where I drew pictures of my future bakery until my hand cramped. The years that followed established a pattern that would define my childhood and adolescence. Every achievement I earned was minimized. Every setback was proof of my inadequacy. When I made honor roll, my father grunted and mentioned that Isaac had made high honor roll. When I won a blue ribbon at the county fair for my apple pie, my mother said it was probably because the judges felt sorry for me since I was so young. When I got my first job at 15 working at a local diner to save money for culinary school, Isaac started borrowing money from my carefully hidden savings jar. $5 here, 20 there. When I confronted him, he laughed. "What are you gonna do, tell Mom and Dad? They'll just say I need it more. I have car insurance to pay, college applications to submit. You're just saving for some stupid dream." He was right. The few times I tried to complain, I was told I was being selfish. "Family helps family," my mother would say, not seeing the irony that the help only seemed to flow in one direction. My father's version was more direct. "Isaac is building a future. You're playing with flour." So I stopped complaining. I got a second job on weekends, cleaning houses for elderly neighbors. I learned to hide my money better. I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a target. I learned that my dreams were something to be ashamed of, something to pursue in secret like a vice. When I was 18, I received my acceptance letter to the Culinary Institute of America. It was the happiest moment of my life up to that point. The thick envelope, the congratulatory letter, the scholarship information that would cover half my tuition. I had done it. Despite everything, despite them, I had done it. I waited until Sunday dinner to share the news, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this achievement was big enough to earn their pride. I was so naive. I cleared my throat 3 times before anyone even looked up from their plates. "I have some news," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I got accepted to the Culinary Institute of America. It's one of the best culinary schools in the country, and I got a partial scholarship. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father's fist came down on the table so hard the dishes jumped. "Culinary school. Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea how much money that costs? Even with a scholarship, it's tens of thousands of dollars. For what? So you can learn to make fancy toast eversin olaces lashin." My mother's face had gone pale. "Janice, this is so impractical. Isaac is graduating next year and he needs help with his student loans. We were hoping you might get a job and contribute to the household while you figure out something realistic." Isaac leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that familiar smirk playing on his lips. "So what's the plan, sis? You gonna graduate and sell cookies on a street corner?" Mom and Dad worked hard to keep a roof over our heads. "Maybe think about someone other than yourself for once." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the 18 years of accumulated dismissals. Maybe it was the scholarship letter still clutched in my hand, proof that someone somewhere believed I was worth investing in. Maybe it was just that I was finally old enough to understand that their lack of faith in me was their failure, not mine. I stood up deliberately, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm going to that school, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. I've saved almost $10,000. I'll take out loans for the rest. And when I graduate, I'm going to open the best bakery this town has ever seen. You don't have to believe in me. You never have. But you'll see. I'll make sure you see. I threw my napkin on the table and walked out. Behind me, I heard Isaac's laughter and my father's voice, "Let her go. She'll come crawling back when reality hits." I didn't cry until I was in my car, and even then I didn't cry for long. I had too much to do. Applications to complete, loans to secure, a future to build. Their laughter would become my fuel. Culinary school was the hardest and most rewarding 2 years of my life. While my classmates went home for holidays and summer breaks, I worked doubles at restaurants, perfecting my craft and saving every penny. I learned French pastry techniques from Chef Laurent, who saw something in me that my own family never had. "You have the gift, Mademoiselle Janice," he would say in his thick accent. "You create not just food but emotion." Z's is rare. I learned bread making from a master baker who trained in Germany. I learned cake decoration from a woman who'd made desserts for 3 presidents. I absorbed everything like a sponge, staying late in the kitchens, arriving early, pushing myself harder than anyone else because I had more to prove. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas those 2 years. My mother called occasionally, brief conversations that always circled back to how well Isaac was doing in his engineering job, how proud they were of his new apartment, his new car. She never asked about my classes or my grades. My father didn't call at all. Isaac sent a few texts, usually when he needed money, which I had learned to ignore. I built a new family among my classmates and teachers, people who understood that food was art, that feeding people was sacred, that creating something beautiful and delicious from simple ingredients was absolutely a real career. When I graduated top of my class, I invited them to the ceremony. None of them came. My mother claimed she had a dentist appointment she couldn't reschedule. My father said he had to work. Isaac didn't even bother with an excuse. So I sat in that auditorium watching my classmates hug their families, watching parents beam with pride, and I made myself a promise. I would never again give them the power to disappoint me. Whatever I built, I would build without them. Whatever I achieved, I would achieve in spite of them. 6 months after graduation, I found it. A tiny rundown storefront on a corner lot in a neighborhood that was just starting to gentrify. The previous tenant had been a used bookstore that went out of business. The place was a disaster: water-stained ceiling tiles, cracked linoleum floors, ancient wiring, a kitchen area that would need to be completely rebuilt to code. But it had good bones, huge windows that let in gorgeous morning light, and rent I could almost afford. I signed the lease with shaking hands, using every penny of my savings for the first month's rent and security deposit. I had no money left for renovations, no safety net, no backup plan. Just myself, my skills, and a bone-deep certainty that this was my moment. I called my parents to tell them. Maybe I was still hoping for some small acknowledgement, some tiny gesture of support. My father answered, "Dad, I did it. I leased a space for my bakery. I'm really doing this." There was a long pause. "Then Janice, don't waste my time with this nonsense. Call me back when you have a real job." He hung up. I stared at my phone for a long moment, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Then I put the phone down, rolled up my sleeves, and started demolishing the old kitchen. If I had to do this alone, I'd do it alone. The next 4 months were a blur of 18-hour days. I did as much of the renovation work as I could myself to save money, watching YouTube videos on electrical work and plumbing at 2 in the morning. I painted every wall myself, chose every tile, built every shelf. I maxed out 3 credit cards, buying equipment, ovens, mixers, display cases. I created a menu that showcased everything I'd learned: classic French pastries next to American comfort desserts, artisan breads next to wedding cakes. I designed a logo, hired a friend from culinary school to help me build a website, and poured everything I had into making this dream real. The day before my grand opening, I was in the kitchen at 5 in the morning baking my first batch of croissants when I heard a knock at the locked front door. Through the glass, I could see a woman about my age, professionally dressed, holding a folder. I wiped the flour off my hands and opened the door. "We're not open yet," I started to say, but she smiled and interrupted. "I know. I'm Sarah Mitchell from the Chronicle. We're doing a feature on new businesses in the neighborhood. Would you be willing to talk to me about your bakery?" That interview changed everything. Sarah's article ran 2 days after my opening, a full-page spread with photos of me in my kitchen, close-ups of my pastries, and a heartwarming narrative about a young chef following her dream. The headline read, "Dreams Rising New Bakery Brings Artisan Quality to the Neighborhood." The response was overwhelming. Lines around the block. Customers who drove from the suburbs just to try my chocolate croissants. Catering orders for parties and events. Within 6 weeks, I had to hire 2 employees. Within 3 months, I was profitable. Within 6 months, I was looking at expanding my hours. But success has a way of attracting the wrong kind of attention. Isaac showed up on a Tuesday morning about 8 months after I'd opened. I was behind the counter helping a rush of customers when I saw him walk in. He looked older, a little heavier, but that same entitled swagger was unmistakable. He waited until I'd finished with a customer, then approached with his arms open like he expected a hug. "Hey sis, look at this place. I always knew you'd make something of yourself." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. "What do you want, Isaac?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. Other customers were watching. "Can't a guy visit his sister? See her success. I'm proud of you, Janice." "Really?" He looked around, taking in the busy cafe, the display cases full of pastries, the line of customers. "You know, this is really something. Family business and all." That phrase. Family business. It sent a chill down my spine. This isn't a family business. This is my business. I built it alone. Isaac's smile didn't waver. "Sûr, sûr. But family is family, right? Listen, I'm between jobs right now and I thought maybe you could use some help. I'm good with people, could work the register, maybe help with social media. You know, take some of the pressure off you." Every instinct I had screamed danger, but I was tired, overwhelmed, and maybe there was still some small part of me that wanted to believe he'd changed. That maybe my success had finally earned me some respect. So I made the biggest mistake of my adult life. I said, "Okay, part-time, trial basis, $10 an hour." His grin widened. "That's my girl. You won't regret this." I regretted it almost immediately. Isaac showed up late more often than he was on time. When he did arrive, he spent more time chatting with customers about himself than actually helping them. He'd position himself near the register, making small comments to customers like, "Yeah, my sister and I are really building something special here," or "family business, you know. We've always been a team." It made my skin crawl, but I told myself I was being oversensitive. He was helping, sort of. It was fine. But then things started going wrong. Money would be off at the end of the day, never huge amounts, just $20 or $30 here and there. When I mentioned it, Isaac would shrug. "Must be miscounting change. You're so busy, easy to make mistakes." Supplies would go missing. Entire trays of pastries would disappear, and Isaac would claim customers had taken them, though I'd never rung up those sales. He started rearranging my carefully planned displays, moving things around and telling customers, "We're trying a new layout." I convinced Janice to let me handle the merchandising. The final straw came on a Saturday, my busiest day of the week. Isaac showed up 3 hours late, reeking of alcohol, and had the audacity to plant himself at a table in the customer area loudly, telling a group of people that he was the co-owner and that he'd been instrumental in getting the bakery off the ground. One of my regular customers, Mrs. Patterson, approached me with concern. "Janice, honey, is everything okay? That man is telling people he owns half this place." I felt something inside me turn to ice. I walked over to Isaac's table, my professional smile firmly in place. "Isaac, could I see you in the back for a moment?" He followed me into the kitchen storage area, still grinning like this was all a joke. The moment the door closed, I turned on him. "You don't own any part of this bakery. You didn't help me build it. You didn't invest a penny. You show up late, you drink before work, and now you're lying to my customers about being a co-owner. This ends today. You're fired." The grin dropped from his face. For a moment, I saw something ugly flash in his eyes, something mean and calculating. Then he pulled out his phone. "That's cute, Janice. Real cute. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call Mom and Dad right now and tell them how you're treating me. How you promised me a partnership and now you're going back on your word. How you've been stealing from the family. Let's see how they feel about their precious daughter then." He started dialing, his eyes locked on mine, daring me to stop him. I felt the blood drain from my face. Even after everything, the thought of them thinking worse of me than they already did sent a spike of pain through my chest. Isaac saw my hesitation, and his grin returned. "That's what I thought. So here's the new arrangement. I keep working here, but we make it official. I get a title, a real salary, and a percentage of the profits. That's fair, right? I mean, I am helping you run this place. Every fiber of my being wanted to throw him out immediately, but I also knew that he would absolutely make good on his threat. He'd call my parents, twist the story, and they'd believe him because they'd always believed him. So I said the only thing I could think of. I need time to think about it. Isaac patted my shoulder and I had to force myself not to flinch. Sure, sis. Take all the time you need. But not too long, okay? I've got bills to pay. He walked back out to the front and I heard him tell customers, just some family business stuff to sort out. You know how it is. I stood in that storage room surrounded by 50-pound bags of flour and industrial-sized containers of sugar, and I realized something important. I wasn't the same terrified girl who'd left that dinner table 5 years ago. I wasn't the victim anymore. And I was done being pushed around. That night, after closing, I sat in my apartment above the bakery with a notebook and started making lists. Everything Isaac had done. Every time money went missing and when. Every instance of him lying to customers. Every time he showed up late or drunk. I pulled up my security camera footage and started watching, taking notes with timestamps. I saw him pocketing cash from the register when he thought no one was looking. I saw him taking entire boxes of pastries and loading them in his car, presumably to sell somewhere else. I saw him literally sleeping in the storage room during his shift. It was all there, and I'd been too busy, too overwhelmed to notice. The next morning, I called my parents and invited them to Sunday dinner at their house. My mother sounded surprised but pleased. Of course, honey. It'll be nice to see you. Isaac mentioned you two are working together now. We're so glad you're finally being reasonable about family. I didn't correct her. I just said I'd be there at 6 and hung up. Then I called Isaac and told him the same thing. Family meeting, I said. Mom and Dad want to discuss the bakery situation. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. About time. I'll see you there, partner. That Sunday dinner is seared into my memory like a brand. I arrived exactly on time, carrying nothing, my hands empty for once. My parents answered the door together, my mother immediately fussing about how thin I looked, my father grunting a hello. Isaac was already there, sprawled on the couch, like he owned the place, beer in hand. There she is. The entrepreneur. He raised his beer in mock salute. We sat down to dinner, the same dining room table where they'd laughed at my dreams all those years ago. The pot roast my mother had made sat between us like a centerpiece of false normalcy. My father served himself first as always, then passed the platter to Isaac as always. My mother fussed with napkins and side dishes. Finally, when everyone had food, my father cleared his throat. So Janice. Isaac tells us there's been some tension at the bakery. I cut a piece of pot roast carefully, my movements deliberate. Is that what he told you? My mother jumped in her voice, taking on that particular tone that meant she'd already decided who was right and who was wrong. Honey, we know you're stressed. Running a business is hard. But Isaac is family, and he's been trying to help you. We think it would be good if you made him an official partner. Share the load a little. You've always been so stubborn about doing everything yourself. I really looked at her, and saw that she genuinely believed what she was saying. She genuinely thought that Isaac, who'd never worked an honest day in his life, who'd stolen from me for years, who'd shown up to my business drunk and lied to my customers, deserved half of what I'd built. My father took over his voice, brooking no argument. We've discussed it, and we think 50-50 is fair. Isaac brings people skills and business sense. You bring the baking. It's a good partnership. Isaac was trying to look humble, but I could see the triumph in his eyes. I mean, if that's what Mom and Dad think is best, I just want to help Janice. We're family. I put down my fork. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to give Isaac, who didn't contribute 1 penny to starting my bakery, who didn't support me when I went to culinary school, who's been stealing from me for months, half of my business. Just because we share DNA? The room went silent. My mother's face flushed. Stealing. Janice, that's a terrible thing to say about your brother. He wouldn't do that. Isaac leaned forward, his voice taking on a hurt tone. See, this is what I've been dealing with. She's been paranoid, accusing me of things, making it impossible to work with her. I've tried Mom. I really have. But she doesn't trust me. My father's face had gone red. Janice Marie, you apologize to your brother right now. He's been nothing but supportive, and this is how you repay him. After everything this family has done for you, and there it was. The accusation that had haunted me my whole life. After everything this family has done for you. As if 18 years of dismissal, mockery, and emotional neglect was doing something for me. As if they hadn't told me my dreams were worthless. as if they hadn't failed to show up to a single important moment in my life. I looked at each of them in turn. My mother, who'd never defended me once. My father, who'd never had a kind word for anything I'd accomplished. Isaac, who'd spent his entire life taking from me and now wanted to take the one thing I'd built without him. And I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. More like clarity. A sudden, crystal-clear understanding that I didn't owe these people anything. That blood relation didn't obligate me to set myself on fire to keep them warm. Okay, I said, my voice calm. I'll think about it. I'll really consider making this partnership official. My mother's face brightened. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. You'll see this is the right choice. Family needs to stick together. Isaac leaned back, that smug smile back on his face. I knew you'd see reason, sis. This is going to be great. My father just grunted already, reaching for seconds the matter settled in his mind. I finished my pot roast, made small talk about the weather and their neighbors, and left exactly 1 hour after I'd arrived. In my car, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I pulled out my phone and called the best lawyer I could find. Her name was Rachel Rodriguez, and she'd handled a friend's small business dispute with impressive ruthlessness. When she answered, I said, I need to sue my brother for theft and fraud, and I need to do it in a way that leaves no room for doubt. Money is no object. Can you help me? There was a pause, and then she said, come to my office tomorrow morning at 8. Bring documentation of everything. I spent that entire night organizing. Bank statements showing the missing money. Security camera footage burned onto DVDs with timestamps. A detailed log of every incident. Text messages where Isaac had demanded money over the years. Photos of the bakery's financial records before and after he started helping. I even tracked down receipts from equipment purchases and my original business plan proving I'd done this entirely on my own. By sunrise, I had 3 thick folders of evidence. My meeting with Rachel lasted 4 hours. She watched the security footage with an expression that grew progressively more grim. This is clear-cut theft, she said. But suing family is complicated. It gets messy. Are you sure you want to do this? I met her eyes. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She nodded slowly. All right. Here's what we're going to do. The next 2 months were the strangest of my life. I continued running the bakery, smiling at customers, perfecting new recipes, growing the business. Isaac kept showing up increasingly bold in his assumptions that the partnership was a done deal. He started making decisions without consulting me, ordering supplies I didn't need, promising discounts to customers that ate into my profits. My parents called regularly, assuming everything was settled, offering unsolicited advice about how Isaac and I should run our business together. I let them believe it. I played along. Because while they were congratulating themselves on finally forcing me to be reasonable, Rachel was building an airtight case. She subpoenaed Isaac's bank records and found the deposits that corresponded exactly with the missing cash from my register. She interviewed my employees, all of whom had stories about Isaac's behavior. She hired a forensic accountant who calculated exactly how much money Isaac had stolen down to the penny. She even found the people Isaac had been selling my stolen pastries to, getting signed statements from them. The day I filed the lawsuit, I changed all the locks on the bakery, removed Isaac from the schedule, and sent a formal letter via Rachel terminating his employment for cause. The letter detailed every instance of theft, listed the total amount stolen, and informed him that he was being sued for that amount, plus damages, and that there was a restraining order preventing him from coming within 100 feet of the bakery or my apartment. I had the papers served to him at my parents' house, where he'd apparently been staying conveniently while unemployed, despite his claims of being between jobs. My phone started ringing within the hour. My mother was hysterical. How could you do this to your brother? To this family. We thought you'd finally grown up and instead you're suing your own blood. What kind of person does that? I let it go to voicemail. Then my father, his message short and brutal. You're dead to me. Don't ever contact us again. I saved that one. Isaac's messages alternated between threatening and pleading. You're going to regret this. Then an hour later, come on Janice, let's work this out. Family, remember, I forwarded all of them to Rachel. The weeks leading up to the trial were horrible in a different way than anything I'd experienced before. Before I'd been ignored, dismissed, made to feel small. This was active hatred. My parents hired Isaac a lawyer, draining what I later learned was a significant portion of their retirement fund. They showed up at the bakery trying to force their way in, yelling at me through the locked door that I was destroying the family. Customers recorded it on their phones. One video went viral locally, and suddenly I was getting interviews, requests from news outlets wanting to cover the family bakery feud. I declined all of them. This wasn't entertainment. This was my life, my survival, my refusal to be a victim one more day. Rachel coached me through every step. Keep your head down. Run your business. Let the evidence speak for itself. Don't engage with them on social media. Don't respond to their messages. Don't defend yourself in the court of public opinion. Save it for the actual court. So I did. I woke up every morning at 4 baked bread, and pastries served my customers with a smile grew my business. At night, I prepared for trial, going over questions Rachel would ask, practicing staying calm under pressure. The trial lasted 3 days. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, more cramped, more ordinary. My parents sat behind Isaac, my mother dabbing at her eyes with tissues, my father's face set in stone. They looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. Isaac sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, his lawyer beside him, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. Rachel was magnificent. Methodical, thorough, devastating. She presented the security footage on a large screen showing Isaac's theft in crystal-clear, high definition. She showed the bank records highlighting the deposits. She called my employees as witnesses, each one describing Isaac's behavior, his lies to customers, his theft. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive as a sister who'd promised her brother a partnership and then cruelly reneged. Isaac took the stand and lied, beautifully, tears in his eyes, as he talked about how he'd always supported me, how he'd helped me build the business, how I'd turned on him. But then Rachel cross-examined him. "Mr. Patterson, you stated that you helped your sister build her business from the beginning. Can you tell the court how much money you invested in Janice's bakery?" Isaac shifted in his seat. "Well, I provided support, emotional support, and advice." Rachel didn't smile. "That's not what I asked. How much money did you invest?" "A dollar amount, please." "I don't recall exactly." "Let me help you recall." "You invested $0, correct?" "I invested time." $0. "And you stated you helped renovate the space. Which walls did you paint specifically?" Isaac's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Isaac stammered through non-answers until it became painfully clear he had no idea about any of the renovation work because he hadn't been there. Rachel moved on to the security footage. "Can you explain why in this footage dated March 15th at 2:17 p.m. you are seen removing cash from the register and placing it in your pocket?" Isaac's face went red. "I was just borrowing it. I was going to pay it back." "Borrowing without asking is called stealing, Mr. Patterson." "And did you pay it back?" "I was going to." "That's not what I asked." "Did you pay it back?" "Yes or no?" "No." Rachel continued like this for 2 hours, systematically destroying every lie, every excuse, every attempt at justification. By the end, Isaac looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. My parents looked stricken, maybe finally understanding the scope of what their son had done. Or maybe just upset that their plan wasn't working. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts of theft. Guilty of fraud. The judge ordered Isaac to pay back every penny he'd stolen, plus interest, plus damages for harm to my business reputation, plus my legal fees. The total came to just over $47,000. She also issued a permanent restraining order keeping him away from me and my business and ordered him to pay an additional $10,000 in punitive damages to deter others from thinking they can steal from family members with impunity. I sat very still, Rachel's hand on my arm. I'd won. Completely, totally, undeniably. The evidence had been too clear, too overwhelming. There was no way to spin this, no way to make me the villain. I'd won, and somehow I felt nothing. Just a strange emptiness where years of pain and anger had lived. Outside the courthouse, my parents were waiting. My mother rushed up to me, her face blotchy with tears. "Janice, please. You can't let them take him to jail. He's your brother. We're your family. You can drop the charges, you can tell them you made a mistake. Please." My father stood behind her, and for the first time in my life, he looked uncertain. "We'll pay you back ourselves," he said, his voice gruff. "We'll figure something out. Just don't do this." I looked at them both, these people who'd shaped so much of my pain, and I felt that same clarity I'd felt at their dinner table. He's not going to jail unless he doesn't pay. This is a civil case, but the restraining order stands. And no, you're not paying me back. Isaac is. He stole from me, he'll face the consequences. My mother grabbed my arm. "We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. You can't just throw us away. I gently removed her hand. You threw me away every time you laughed at my dreams. Every time you chose Isaac over me. Every time you made me feel worthless for wanting something you didn't understand. I didn't throw you away. You were never really there to begin with. My father's face went hard again. So that's it. After everything we did for you, raising you, feeding you, putting a roof over your head, you did the bare minimum that parents are legally required to do. That doesn't earn you the right to steal from me or support someone who does. I'm done. I'm done hoping you'll be proud of me. I'm done trying to earn love I should have gotten freely. I'm done. I started to walk away, then turned back. Don't come to the bakery. Don't call me. Don't text. If you violate the restraining order regarding Isaac, I'll file charges. If you harass me, I'll file for a restraining order against you too. I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm just Janice, the woman who owns the best bakery in town. I walked away from them, standing on the courthouse steps, looking lost and confused. I walked to my car, drove back to the bakery, and reopened for the afternoon rush. Word had spread about the trial outcome, and the line was around the block. Customers hugged me, congratulated me, told me I was brave. I smiled and thanked them and sold out of everything by 4 o'clock. That night I sat in my apartment above the bakery and let myself feel it all. The grief for the family I'd never really had. The anger at the years wasted trying to earn their approval. The exhaustion from fighting so hard for so long. But also underneath all of that, something new. Pride. Satisfaction. Peace. I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought back. I'd won. Not just in court, but in something bigger. I'd refused to be a victim. I'd proved that dreams are worth fighting for. In the months that followed, my business exploded. The publicity from the trial brought curious customers, and my food kept them coming back. I hired 4 more employees. I started doing corporate catering. A local food blogger named me the best bakery in the state. I got approached by investors interested in helping me open a second location. 6 months after the trial, I signed a lease on a space in the downtown business district, twice the size of my original shop, with a full cafe setup. Isaac paid back the money in installments, draining his savings and selling his car. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to another state, unable to find work locally after the trial. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but I felt no guilt either. He'd made his choices. These were his consequences. My parents moved to Florida, selling their house quietly. My mother sent 1 letter mailed to the bakery filled with Bible verses about forgiveness and family. I read it once and threw it away. Maybe someday I'd be able to forgive, but forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean letting them back in to hurt me again. On the day I opened my second location, I stood in the pristine new kitchen, surrounded by top-of-the-line equipment, stainless steel counters, gleaming ovens, warming up for the first bake. My staff was excited, customers were already lining up outside, and reporters were there to cover the expansion. I thought about 6-year-old me covered in flour, dreaming of this exact moment. I thought about 18-year-old me walking out of that dinner with tears streaming down my face, but determination in my heart. I thought about all the versions of myself who'd fought to get here. My assistant manager, Maria, touched my shoulder. "You ready, boss?" I tied on my apron, the same one I'd worn since culinary school, now well worn and stained, but still my favorite. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." We unlocked the doors and let the customers flood in. The morning rush was chaotic and perfect. I moved through the kitchen like a conductor, directing my team, pulling perfect croissants from the oven, piping cream into eclairs, arranging fruit tarts. This was my symphony. This was my art. This was my dream realized. At the end of that first day, exhausted and happy, I posted a photo on the bakery's social media. Just a simple shot of me in my kitchen, flour in my hair, smiling. The caption read, "They said my dream was too small to matter and too big to achieve." Turns out they were wrong on both counts. To everyone who's been told their passion isn't practical, their dream isn't realistic, their ambition is too much, keep baking. Second location now open. The post went viral. I got hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of family members who didn't support them, of dreams they'd been told to abandon, of the courage it took to choose themselves. I read every single one. I cried over some of them. I celebrated the victories. And I realized that my story wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been made to feel small for dreaming big. Now, 5 years after that trial, I have 4 locations across 2 cities. I employ 37 people. I've been featured in national food magazines. I've appeared on morning shows talking about entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity. I've turned my story into a catering empire that specializes in celebrations because I learned that every day you choose yourself is worth celebrating. I still wake up at 4 in the morning, most days still get flour in my hair, still feel that same magic I felt at 6 years old when the buttercream swirls just right. I haven't spoken to my family in those 5 years. I've heard my mother tried to reach out through my lawyer once, but I declined contact. Maybe I'm the villain in their story. Maybe they tell themselves I was always ungrateful, always difficult, always the problem. I've made peace with that. You can't control other people's narratives, only your own. And my narrative is this: I am not a victim. I am a survivor who became a success. I am proof that your family's lack of faith in you doesn't determine your worth. I am evidence that you can build a beautiful life from the broken pieces of the one you left behind. So here's what I want you to take from my story. Your dreams are valid even if the people who should support them don't. Your worth is inherent, not earned through others' approval. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who make you smaller, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Because you deserve people in your life who celebrate your victories instead of trying to steal them. You deserve to build something beautiful and keep it. You deserve to take up space and be proud of it. The taste of revenge isn't actually sweet. It's just the taste of justice, of boundaries upheld, of self-respect regained. But the taste of success, of building something with your own hands that no one can take from you, that's sweeter than any pastry I've ever made. And trust me, I've made some pretty incredible pastries. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family? Have you ever chosen yourself when everyone said you were being selfish? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. And remember, your dreams are worth fighting for, even when you have to fight alone. Especially when you have to fight alone.